Courtney Greve. I'm the secretary for the Riverside Library Board. We have other members of the Riverside Library Board with us tonight. Joan, our president. We have Michael, Ken, Mike, Janice, our lovely director, who we all know and love, and also Nora and Diane. We're very lucky to have a great staff at the library. I know I don't need to preach that to this audience. We have a good presentation that we were hoping would be a good education for the community, but I'm going to go through it very quickly this evening, considering the late hour. I hope people will take a chance to read it and understand a little bit about the library, the changing needs, and the long process that has gotten us to this point. I don't think it will come as a surprise to anyone that our library is really a community hub. It is landmark number 1, and it is the unofficial youth center for Riverside. And the last time we had any kind of significant addition to the building was 1985, when we more than doubled the size of the facility. That addition was funded by a $1.5 million referendum. Since then, we've done a lot of projects: the quiet reading room, new adult books shelving, the opening doors project that really helped to expand access to the elevator so everyone could use both floors of the library. All of this was focused on the adult patrons of the library. We also have done a lot of maintenance, including our HVAC. People saw the big cranes out in front of the library. That was financed through our savings and through a loan with the village that will be paid off in about 2 years. So we've been good fiscal stewards. I'm newer to the board, but the board has done a great job of really planning and having a rainy day fund. We've spent about $500,000 on all the various upkeep, maintenance, roof, plumbing, everything that needs to be done for that historic building, and keeping it the gem that it really is. So here's how we've changed. Our community has changed. We now have up to 1,000 students every month coming to us after school. Like I said, we are the unofficial youth center. Our attendance at programs has more than doubled in the last decade. That's for both children's and adult programs. And meanwhile, we still have, even in the summer months, 100 to 250 patrons per day using the library as an excellent activity and way to get out of the heat and really just use their time. So the needs, we've talked about this a little bit before. I really am going to go quickly. I feel bad about the hour, but we have the big open space with the staircase. All the kids are downstairs. That means all the noise travels upstairs. And we have downstairs the young children mingling with the teenagers with no defined spaces whatsoever. That's one of the main things that we want to address with our renovation. The noise and really getting defined spaces. Shelving, wear and tear, obviously dated carpet, energy efficient lighting would be a big plus.
Courtney,
Yep.
You don't need to rush through this.
I know, it's okay, I feel bad.
Take your time.
But no, it's all right.
This is important. So take your time and let us know what you
I think some of you are probably aware of most of this anyway. You've probably come to the library or you've come to our events. You've seen the condition of things, the condition of the furniture, the lack of storage. We don't really have the space needs to suit what we're providing to the community in terms of programs and services. We also have a public meeting space that gets used very regularly. It's booked often, and unfortunately, it could use an upgrade as well. We did offer naming rights for that and other spaces within the library, still available if anybody's interested, but so far no takers. And our lack of a functional kitchen really limits our opportunities for having programming that includes food, but also having events that include food. So if we wanted to have more weddings or showers or other rental events, we're really limited in that because we have to do all the food prep somewhere else. So this is our vision. It really shifts around the space of the library. What remains in place, the public meeting room gets an expansion, and then there would be a divider down the middle so we could actually have 2 spaces when needed with separate entrances. Oh my, throwing things. Come on, there we go. We needed some comic relief anyway. So genealogy stays in place, but what we're working on first is a new early learners section. So the early learners, we're starting construction very soon. It should be finished by January. This is going to be a great new space. Right now our early learners are where the juvenile middle school section is at the other end, and it's a big open space. The story time room is where the staff meeting room will be, and now we're going to move the story time room into a really great space with glass walls, and the early learner space will finally get to have a view of the river. So that was one of our main goals. Let's get the kids facing the river, taking advantage of the great view, and then we would reorganize and have our teens and juveniles up in the far end, the north end. I think that's north. I always get turned around in Riverside still. But teens and young adults would have their own space. We did get some funding for STEM programming in particular through the REEF grant. And that would be focused on primarily on our teen room and some technology. And really reorganizing, you'll see in the center space how we have long rows of tables and gathering spaces for the kids who are doing their homework. Right now they kind of gather willy-nilly all over the place, and this will really make better use of our space for what we're using it for. So this gets into a little bit more detail about each of the ones that I described. The multi-purpose storytime room, soundproofing, better age-appropriate decor, storage, the enclosed teen space, really giving them their own defined space will hopefully, make them feel like it's their library too and take ownership for their space. We think that's important. And also having appropriate age-appropriate seating for them to gather and do projects together. Our public meeting room, this is what I was saying, it would have a division in it with 2 separate entrances so that it would be, sometimes we have more demand than we can meet. And all the new fixtures, carpet, furniture, energy efficient lighting, really having mobile desks for our librarians so that they can move around where they're needed most. I think that came from them, something that they want. And then of course having the updated shelving, which would be the right height and function for the audience. That's not something we currently have. So here's our timeline. 2013 is when we got going with the Studio GC to evaluate the space, figure out our needs, and come to a conclusion as a board. This is before my time, but to come to a conclusion as a board of what was needed. The space plan was approved in 2016, and some of the projects started right away. The new shelving, the opening doors, the HVAC, a lot of that was completed, all of it was completed without any additional tax levy, but it was also completed with the help of the Friends of the Library and through fundraisers and through the village's help by issuing the loan to us to do the HVAC replacement. Meanwhile, we started our lower level fundraising, and we're going to give you some more details in a second. We've been in that process now for about 3 years, and it has led us to the point where we can do the early learners construction at a cost of $160,000 with the funds that we've raised. So we're pretty proud of that, even though we hoped to have raised more by this point, but at least we're able to start the first phase, and our students, our children, will get the immediate impact. So when we first approved the space plan in 2016, the estimated cost was $1.3 million. A few years have gone by, costs have gone up. That cost has risen now to about $1.5 million. This is all the work that we've done for fundraising. We did a capital campaign mailing, 2 wine tasting fundraisers that are my personal favorite, grants and gifts, the Friends Again, juniors, the REEF fund, the REEF grant that we received for $57,000, art sale donations, we've had gift funds and endowments, and altogether we raised about $217,000. But since $57,000 of that needs to go toward our teen technology space, We have about $167,000 to put toward the Early Learners First project. The sad news is that at this rate, it would take us 15 to 20 years to raise the money to do this project. And that's the point that we want to hammer home. We are never really thought we would come back and ask the voters and ask people to help us get to our goals sooner. We had sincerely hoped that we were going to raise the money that we needed to. But at this rate, we're just afraid that we're going to miss a whole generation and not have the space that we need for them to get the most out of their experience. So we are coming to the village board to ask you to put a referendum on the ballot for $1.5 million, the language of which we will give you in full detail, but we wanted to just introduce this idea with you tonight. This would take us through the rest of the project, everything we've discussed, and here's kind of the breakdown of the costs. So 1.3 million is, I did it again, the actual construction costs, but then we have some other fees for bond fees, architecture and design, and then we built in some unanticipated costs for any construction overruns. Now, if people still are motivated to generously donate to this cause between now and the time we would put it to the voters, or by the before we would issue the bonds, we would love to bring that number down. We're still planning on having our Reading Between the Wines event, which each year has raised about $30,000 thanks to a generous matching donation that we've gotten each year. So this is where we're at today, and here's how it breaks down for homeowners. So if we did a 20-year bond, it would be about a $30 increase for a $300,000 home, or a $52 annual increase for a $500,000 home. And then you'll see that for a 15-year bond, that goes up just a little bit by about $6 for a $300,000 home and $10 for a $500,000 home. We feel this is the most equitable way to approach this project, where everyone could put in a little bit of money every year to get it done sooner, primarily for our kids, but also for the community as a whole, for the community meeting room, that people use on a regular basis, for the teens who are coming there after school because, frankly, there isn't another space for them to go to in town. We really want to make sure that we're doing this in an equitable way, that the young families who are just moving into town are contributing as much as the families who have been here for a long time and might be quicker to pull out their checkbooks, frankly. So, the impact isn't that great. The amount is comparable to the 1984 construction project, was a $1.5 million. So we're really not going for the bucket list project. This is not something where we thought, let's do everything under the sun within the library and see what that big dollar amount is. This is a very targeted effort to renovate the lower level and do it in hopefully a reasonable way that people will support. So here's what the next steps are. We are going to have community meetings, as we have done in the past at the library. We encourage people to come out. We'll schedule those soon. Our library board meeting is the second Tuesday of every month. We always welcome the public to come and give us their feedback. As far as this board, the last day for you to adopt a resolution to put an ordinance on the ballot would be December 30th. And then the deadline to certify that question to the Cook County Clerk's Office is January 9th. We obviously will put out information to the community. We would come back to you if you have any questions. I'm assuming we probably don't want to dive in tonight. We'd be happy to come back another night if that would be easier. We want to answer any questions that the public may have and any questions that you may have. So I did race through that. I think I'm a little spent by the hour as well, so I apologize for speaking so quickly.
No, you did great.
Anything?
I don't know if there's no questions.
Yep, sure.
But since everyone's just been blurting in, I'll
Yeah,
blurt out.
it's happened.
I really appreciate the sense of how the library has changed in function. I know when my daughter, who's now 9, would come to story time, and it was definitely not sort of the big after-school hangout that it is now. And I think the anything you could do to communicate that to people, that it has become, you know, the place for sort of 7th and 8th graders to come. I mean, it's the tables are packed, and for people to need to understand that, I think in my mind that's the key that makes this make sense. Is, you know, if not here, if we don't separate the ages, where are these kids going to go, and isn't that what community is all about?
Right.
So I'd like to see that.
Agree.
And I agree too. You're right. It is the closest thing we have to a youth center right now. And the staff is wonderful with the kids, especially Ms. Silva. Very cool. That's why they want to be there. And Nora, they want to be there because, you know, staff is cool. It's a comfortable place. They can get their homework done. They can socialize. It's a safe place. And I think that we should support you guys in this endeavor.
So if I can just, I agree with this, obviously, but the technical question for us is not whether we think the referendum is a good idea or not, but whether or not we want, because we are the only people who can put it on the ballot. So the question really for us is whether we want to direct staff to work with the library to come back with language. Now, there are some impacts on the village manager. Do you want to?
Sure. So my first suggestion for the library board is the village board would be that our staff would work closely with their staff, because obviously it would have an impact on the village because we would be the bond issuer, so we would be doing a lot of the heavy lifting, and so my initial reaction too, as a former finance director, is I would recommend that a 15-year debt repayment be, because given that you're looking at doing furniture and things of that sort, the life of the asset, when they're looking at issuing debt, they're looking at what are you going to be utilizing it for. And that can be items that we vet along the way, but as part of the question when creating the referendum question for residents, they're going to ask what's the duration of the bond. Also, in speaking with the village's finance director, if the debt is to be issued, if we base it on the March 2020 date, we would need it to be issued. So if the referendum passed and everything was finalized, to move pretty quickly so that it doesn't impact the village's debt limit. Right. Because if the debt is not issued prior to November 1st of 2020, then it does impact the villages. And so that's what I would want our village board to be cognizant of, because the 1.5 million would be approximately 6% of our total legal debt limit.
Have you addressed that in terms of the timeline?
Yes. And I think we think we're well within that we wouldn't have a problem.
That it could be issued in that quickly.
Because of there's a window where this bond would not affect our debt limit because of a statute that was passed.
And will there be actual expenses incurred by the village in this process?
There will, I'm certain, be staff time. In addition to that, anything that legal counsel would do, I would just ask that they would bill the library directly. I know that they're utilizing Kleinthorpe and Jenkins.
I was going to say their library attorneys are really tough to deal with.
So I think that removes a barrier or hurdle, because obviously we're trying to streamline the process and work
so it
with
can
the
be
library
efficient because we'll be doing both sides of it.
So what we really need is just a consensus saying that we favor putting this on the March ballot, and then they will come back with language in either our next meeting or in October.
Correct, and a draft ordinance.
Right.
Everything will be packaged under their expense to get it packaged up. But really, it's just that there's no significant opposition to letting the voters decide.
So do we have a consensus? Yes? Yeah. Yes? Mr. Jason?
Sure.
Yes, yes. It's unanimous. Okay.
Great.
Thank you, and I'm sorry you had to sit through
No, I would have probably been
but
here anyway. So thank you for hearing our presentation tonight and for being so supportive. We want to give everybody a chance to weigh in on this and see if we can make a better space for our kids.
And I know that I don't have enough opportunity to thank the library for what you provide to our village. I know I use it extensively in my own work, and I always see the kids and the adults in there, and you're a jewel and an integral, vital part of our community, so thank you for what you do.
We haven't talked about this, but, it's just to give us an estimate of what she thinks it's going to cost in village time.
Yeah.
She can work that out.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
What a nice way to end a difficult night.
I have a nicer way to end it. We have no new business. I'd ask for a motion to adjourn. By Ms. Peters, second by Mr. Gallegos. Call the order. Roll.
Trustee Peters. Trustee Gallegos.
Aye.
Trustee Giza.
Aye.
Trustee Hannan. Trustee Evans. Trustee Pollock.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Good night.